My last video kind of really made me pause on future videos I was going to make because I can't say that I was completely thrilled about my very last video. There were so many aspects that were being discussed, and there are currently a number of places in the chart where significant long-term transits are being aspected or being brought into conversation, and that makes for a lot of information that you're trying to if there aren't separate videos addressing those areas, it becomes difficult, I think, to kind of distill what is going on at a particular given time, especially when you're talking about days where, or a period of time when you have multiple squares and multiple trines and things like that going on. So I thought the way I want to address it is I actually want to talk about individual parts of the chart where some of these transits are occurring and try and break down the information that way. The downside is that some of these videos will be relatively short and they will provide information that a lot of astrology aficionados will know, but at least I will have put something out there that I can refer people back to, if that makes sense to you, rather than try to distill information and, in videos that either make then the presentation of the information too generalized because it's being trying to be completed in about 20-25 minutes time, or just too much of a jumble. We have a full moon in the sign of Capricorn in less than 48 hours, and it is in the sign of Capricorn. And when I thought about how I would do this, I thought I would start with the sign of Capricorn because that's where Pluto is. And the sign of Capricorn feels really important to me at present, and indeed for the first half of this year, indeed since the North Node eclipses starting to make their presence felt since September of 2021, because especially in the last few degrees of Taurus, and the North Node goes backwards, in the last few degrees of Taurus, whatever was occurring was in direct trine to Pluto in Capricorn. We're also coming up to a time over the next week when Mercury and then the Sun will oppose Pluto in Capricorn from the sign of Cancer, and as more and more planets move into Cancer, Venus, and then eventually next year Mars, they will also oppose Capricorn. The other thing that is worth mentioning is that Pluto leaves Capricorn temporarily in March of 2023. Now, it's not done with Capricorn till November 2024, but starting March 2023, it's gonna do Pluto moves so slowly in one sign that it moves forward, retrogrades, move forward, retrogrades. It kind of, for lack of a better word, inches its way through a sign. And so we're going to, in 2023 and 2024, see Pluto go into Aquarius, retrograde back into Capricorn, go into Aquarius, retrograde back into Capricorn, and finally in November 2024, leave for good and be back in the sign of Capricorn. Now, Pluto has been in the sign of Capricorn since November 26th, 2008. Okay. What I'm going to share now is going to be that much more relevant to you if you know your chart and you know which house is occupied by the sign of Capricorn and what that house stands for. Because wherever Pluto transits, it creates a transformation that is unavoidable. I find that it is often a transformation that is constructive and that is meant to be in the best and sort of the highest, it's meant to assist a soul on its journey. It's never a pleasant transit because it is a transit that is all about change, death and transformation. Pluto, the ruler of the underworld, it's never, and whether it is considered a planet or not is not important. I think astrologically it makes no sense to ignore Pluto. Sometimes the way Pluto works in terms of, I remember a certain astrologer referred to Pluto as the planet that kind of burns down the barn so you can see the moon. The emphasis that I have is sort of on the burning down the barn part. I think of Pluto as a kind of you know, it's like a chariot or um, a tractor even that goes through a sign and has this kind of wrecking ball or this kind of weeding thing at the back of it. And it's just as it moves forward, it will just weed out what it needs to weed out. And the weeding out can be the kind of change that Pluto's involved in is sometimes violent, often unpleasant, and can sometimes involve death, can involve transitioning. Not so much, I find, of the individual whose chart it is, but often people associated with that part of the chart. Now, if you are a Virgo rising, which would make Capricorn in your fifth house, that does not mean that you have lost your children, okay? Or that you need to necessarily fear that in this massive way because Pluto is associated with death in terms of what I said. I think that if you're Virgo rising, however, I would be surprised if since 2008 your relationship either with your romantic self or your creativity or if you have children has not transformed dramatically. And it could not have been an easy change. With Pluto, things are, if something is not working in people's highest benefit, it just goes away. It's just torn apart. If something related to that part of the chart is in danger because of the habits of the chart holder, Pluto can create a significant crisis there to draw attention to what needs to be refurbished. So if you are a Leo rising and Pluto is going through your sixth house and it is now in kind of the last degrees of that house, you may be, and if you have not taken care of your habits and your well-being and your diet and your exercise and you're not taking care of your health, Pluto may very well bring health crises to the fore in a kind of a do or die way. Sorry to use that kind of expression, but in a kind of fix this, because this is a general reading. I'm not going to answer for each and every person with a particular ascendant. I do not have your individual charts. I do not know what is going on in these houses, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so please know that. This is a general reading. But in terms of the theme of Pluto, since 2008, Pluto may have tried very hard and very clearly to make you transform, among other things, not just your employment, but also your sense of health and well-being and routine and habits. And if there has been resistance or if the change is not forthcoming, you may start to feel a kind of urgency now between now and 2024, I would say between now and March 2023, to transform what needs to be transformed here for its highest good. And the eclipses in Taurus that we're currently right smack dab in the middle of these eclipses in Taurus. We had the solar eclipse on April 30th. We have a lunar eclipse on November the 8th. We are pretty much right in the middle, and we have Mars transiting Taurus right now. And the changes and wherever it is that we're meant to lean into sort of the Taurus part of our chart, because that's where the north node eclipses are here to assist in this transformation. Now, we have the full moon in Capricorn. Some astrologers would consider this full moon conjunct Pluto. It's about 6 or 7 degrees off. I tend to look at my conjunctions and my aspects in kind of a tighter 5-degree orb. But I also loosen it up entirely and kind of go with the ancients and think that if there are planets in the same house, then they are conjunct. They are cohabiting in the same house. They may not be close, but they're cohabiting. So let's, for the sake of that argument, just say that this full moon is conjunct Pluto. This full moon that is happening, and all of this information, a lot of it is going to be repeated. Not all of it. A lot of this is going to end up getting repeated in the full moon video. The full moon also, on the way to becoming full, trines Uranus and the North Node in Taurus. Among other things, it's also opposing Mercury in Cancer. Okay, more on the full moon when I do the full moon video over the next 48 hours. But I thought if we're going to talk about the full moon, and then I'm going to start talking about Pluto and Capricorn, I may as well just talk about the fact that wherever the sign of Capricorn sits in your chart, if I could leave you with a kind of a homework assignment right now, I would just say, think about the part of your chart where Capricorn sits, and think about what has transformed in perhaps an often violent way. It doesn't have to be physically violent, but think about that analogy of someone, the god of the underworld, driving a tractor and just weeding out whatever it is that needs to be weeded out. And remember that within that transformation, if anything is being resisted or that transformation is not completed, crises will and can be created. And especially now that Pluto is in the final degrees of Capricorn over the next 2 years, the pressure will be very, very strong to finish this transformation. And you can go back to November 26, 2008 and see what started then. Okay. If you are Capricorn rising, Capricorn in your first house, look to not only how you yourself have transformed, perhaps even physically, but more importantly, I almost want to erase that part, more importantly, your relationships and your committed relationships. When you're looking at a house, you have to look at the opposite house as well. When it is in your first house, it often has to do with your boundaries and where you are holding yourself too small with regard to either your marriage or your committed partnerships. And your sense of identity, your sense of self vis-a-vis anybody, whether it is a personal partner, a business partner, anybody with whom you are in some sort of verbal or written contract, legalities, boss, whoever fits into that other category that you're contending with, whether it is an ally or an adversary. Pluto has, since November 2008, your identity, your sense of self, who you are in relationship, has sought to transform that. And look back to November 26, 2008 and see how that has happened. Capricorn ascendant folks I know, marriage, divorce, death of a spouse or a partner, a very strong theme there. If you are a Sagittarius ascendant, your income, your sense of self-worth, the relationship between your sense of self-worth and income, and how you use your skills and talents and where you bring worth to generate your income. How is that being transformed? Where is the invitation there? Pluto's transit in the second house can mean wealth, but it does have this kind of rags to riches to rags kind, transformation. Do not assume that if Pluto is coming to your second house that it's going to make you a gazillionaire. It may invite you to do it, but you've really got to be present to what you need to do in order to effect that transformation. And whenever it comes to feeling aligned and being in flow, just keep in mind where your natal chart north node placement is. So what I just said also applies for Capricorn rising folks, because Pluto is going to be going into your second house. So you can sort of go that way with wherever it is that it is placed. If it's a first house, I don't want to right now just go right around the chart and kind of explain all that stuff. If you don't know your chart, clearly this is harder to really fully ascertain. It's going to be hard to know where this transformation is occurring. One clue could be that if you have a sense of where the eclipses are affecting you, it may be hard to know where the transformation is occurring, but it's a transformative time. It is a transformative time, which is why I feel strongly. And with this full moon happening in the sign of Capricorn, and with the trine and the opposition that it is making, I think we need to give a certain amount of attention to, without a doubt, the Capricorn side of our chart. Take stock of how we can work with Pluto to complete these kind of irreversible transformations that are ideally in our best interests. We can reflect on where we've been in resistance, where we haven't wanted to let certain things go, where we thought things should and be the same, and how letting go of certain things are actually perhaps a benefit to us, how we can reconstruct something, how we may need to burn something down in order to build it up again in a way that actually benefits us and works in accord with our truest self. That will help mitigate some of the resistance. So it might be time to take stock and move in that direction. We have enough transits right now that are supporting that with the Taurus eclipses this year and next year. But this year's transits have been very, very relevant because a lot of them have been meeting up with Pluto at the very end, and they'll continue to do so. They'll continue to do so. But right now, it's an important thing to consider. Mars is going to be trining Pluto relatively soon. I mean, God, the last video I did that I was criticizing my own work, was a Mars square Pluto moment. So luckily now we have Mars trining Pluto. So that, but again, it's trining from Taurus. So there's going to be a certain amount of support there. What is the link between the Taurus and the Capricorn parts of your charts, my friends? Which houses do they occupy? How are the transformations in one supporting the other? And it's going to be the eclipse transformation in Taurus and the energy that you need to pour into the sign of Taurus that is going to support the transformation of the Capricorn part of the chart. This is not to say you need to remain passive about the Capricorn part of the chart. It's kind of two-pronged. Energy has to go into the Taurus part of your chart because that's where the North Node eclipses is. That's where your development is. That is where the magic can be unlocked. But with the Capricorn part of the chart, because Pluto's in the last few degrees now till the end of next year, actually 2 years, 2024, it's time to really pay attention to whatever it is that needs to be reconstructed there, so that as Pluto leaves, in its effort to draw attention to something that needs attention, that the attention isn't created in a dramatic or a drastic way. So if, for example, it is a health-related issue, that it doesn't turn into a full-blown health crisis. If you are Cancer rising and it is an issue to do with marriage or committed partnerships, or who you are in partnerships, or how others perceive you in committed partnerships, that something dramatic doesn't happen that gives you that wake-up call to transform that aspect of things. When transits happen in our first house, they often have to do with us holding ourselves too small. When transits happen in the seventh house, it could be that others are feeling like they need to set boundaries with us. So it could be that there's a need to transform how we relate with others because others are seeing us in a problematic way. Maybe because it's Pluto involved in a controlling way, right? So those crises can be created over the next 2 or 3 years if you are not paying attention to whatever's been going on since November 2008 in the marriage or committed partnership, business partnerships, legalities part of the chart, where you have to reflect on, are you coming off too strong? Are other people having to set boundaries for you? Have people been leaving? Has there been a kind of transformation in that part of the chart? And what is that transformation trying to teach you? Have you been on the receiving ends of people leaving, or have there been divorces or separations or even marriage? I hope you're getting my point. If I was talking to individuals, then I could hone down more and actually look at the individual charts. Okay, I hope that's enough information on the Pluto transit for now, the Capricorn part of the chart. You do need to hold it in your consciousness over the next 48 to 72 hours because we have the full moon there. Think about the Taurus part of your chart, and I will develop these themes again. Transits, whether the transit occurs in Aries or Taurus or Cancer, or then in Virgo and then in Libra, they will keep aspecting this particular part of the chart. The reason why I'm harping on these houses now is because some of the transits are just that much more significant due to the Taurus eclipses and the role that the sign of Gemini is playing with these Taurus and Scorpio eclipses, and a separate video with Neptune and Pisces. Okay, as I said, I can tell as I start to talk about this stuff that it becomes too much. So Pluto, Capricorn, irreversible transformation, reconstruction in a way that is helpful to you, or else something will get destroyed in order to get your attention to it. And Taurus eclipses supporting this Capricorn portion of the chart, and over the next 72 hours, some visibility being brought to it in a normal full moony way. We have full moons every 28 days. That will that's just necessary right now because that's where we have the full moon. If you found this video useful, feel free to share it. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click on the bell icon next to the subscribe button, the wiggly part on top to be notified whenever I do new videos. Feel free to like, comment. That tends to drive traffic on YouTube, and we will continue forward. Thank you.